Insider Magazine. This week's interview is with IFBB Pro, Mike Cipriani. How you doing today, Mike?
Good, man. Good. Just, been eating and getting ready for my back session later on. So things are in the works as usual. Not much has changed. In my head, I always kind of just pretend and focus like I'm just getting ready for a show regardless of where my health is at.
There is no off season, right?
Nah, man. Never.
So listen, everybody has been talking about you in the industry right now because you put a obviously very candid video out there that many people loved, many people hated. You can never keep everybody happy.
Yeah.
But I think it's really important that we sort of retrace a little bit about how did you get to where you are. Obviously, 2015 in Edmonton, we saw you turn pro for the CBBF Nationals at that time. There was a phenomenal lineup in that contest with the likes of Johnny Shreve and obviously Chris Bumstead, Regan Grimes, some of the people we now see obviously quite popular in the industry. And then from there, take us through this. But in 2016, you made your pro debut. Tell us a bit about 2016.
So 2016, my pro debut, which was like mid-July, I did Baltimore. That was actually the first and only year that they had open bodybuilding. And then after that, that show was great actually for me. I mean, the placing was just outside of top 10. It was a really steep competition because for that show, they actually increased the prize money. It was 30 grand for first place. So there was a lot of big names there, but great for me to get out there and get my feet wet. And then after that, I did Tampa. Tampa, also a huge show and a great experience for me. And then my best placing that year was actually right afterwards at the Golden State Pro, which was held in Sacramento. It was Hani Rambod's show. Okay. And that was a great lineup. Probably still one of the best career highlights for me. I beat Brandon Curry at that show. So that was something really special for me. Yeah. I really look up to Brandon. He's a great, family man, great competitor, just a gentleman all around. So great to be sharing the stage with guys like that first year as a pro.
Okay, then 2017, you did how many shows in 2017?
I did 3.
Okay. How did you do that year? What was your highlight? Do you remember? Or
2017. So the first show I did was Toronto. I came in a little flat, but I placed 6th. Like I was still, I was lean, but I wasn't as full as I wanted. And then after that, we did Vancouver, and I feel like that definitely was my highlight for 2017. Luke Sandoz on the stage, Johnny Shreve, Big Eddie from San Diego was there. All the Canadian pros like Regan and Paulo was there. Henry was there. All the guys were there. So again, it was great to just be shaking it up with everybody. And it was a highly competitive show that year. So that was probably one of my favorite shows ever, actually.
That was the year Regan Grimes placed 2nd.
Yes. Yeah.
Everybody in Canada was cheering for him to win.
That's right.
Okay, going into 2018, you did Muscle Mayhem, you did Vancouver Pro Show and Toronto Pro Show. Muscle Mayhem I have down here 12th, Vancouver Pro you had done 8th, and that would have been in July, so that would have closed off that season. Yeah.
That was actually the last show I did because 2019 I had the shoulder surgery, and then 2020 I got into the whole heart disease thing and also my elbow surgery. So I didn't really get a chance to compete after that as much as I wanted to. Just wasn't in the cards, but I'm aiming obviously to get back up there.
Okay, so now take us through this because you mentioned you had some heart problems and was it 2019? You got an injury in 2019 where you had surgery. But 2020 is when you got some signs. What were the signs that you got that there was something wrong with your cardiovascular system?
So at the time, it was kind of very blurred because, after my 2018 season, I noticed that I was heavy, but I was gasping for breath a lot more. I'd experienced dizziness. When I laid down, like my heartbeat would go crazy, and I didn't feel healthy, to be honest. But there was actually an episode where I took a peptide and I went into anaphylactic shock. And that actually was what brought me into the hospital. And then from there, they said, you have heart issues and cardiomyopathy from all the years of bodybuilding.
Now, in terms of the drug use, there's obviously people are going to be on the camp that is purely genetic. And we see that from, people like Andy Hammond had recently had heart problems and ended up dying with a clot. And there's been a number of these things. Now, one of the things that we can't refute is that steroids don't make you live longer. Nobody
Correct.
would ever deny that. You don't extend your life in being
Yes.
longer. But
Yeah.
the argument is that maybe the quality of life you have while you're on the earth is a better quality of life. But I've never ever read a study or heard anybody show me any research that showed it actually improved cardiovascular efficiency or ejection fractions or anything like
Yeah,
that.
not improved. Absolutely not.
So, in your experience, I mean, how long at this point were you mentioned peptides, and obviously on your video, it was really against insulin. And
Insulin,
so,
yeah.
how much? I mean, when you first got diagnosed at that time, were you using insulin at that time?
So the majority of my heavy insulin use, like I said, was with Milos during the 2018 season, and then 29 I was off really because my shoulder surgery. So at the end of 2019, I started with Patrick, but everything was very mild. Like I went from using 65 IUs with Milos to 5 with Patrick. So everything was very modified, which I obviously did like a lot better. And then it was shortly after that where I had that episode with, it was GHRP2, which I wasn't really, haven't done a lot with. Patrick recommended it, but it's very ironic because the thing that almost killed me is actually what saved my life, because I never would have went in to see the cardiologist. And when I went in, he said, you know, at the route you were going, you had about 3 months left, 3-4 months left, and you either would have dropped out of heart failure or you'd be on a pacemaker at best the rest of your life. So it's crazy how the universe works sometimes. You know, I guess everything really happens for a reason.
You know, in that time, were you using, I hate, if you don't feel comfortable answering these questions, obviously shut me up, but clenbuterol?
Yeah.
And of that, because I've obviously seen that that's caused apoptosis of cardiac tissues. Thyroid, any of that stuff in your system at the time?
Yeah, I mean, I use Clem, but more so just for prep. It's not something I use year round, and it was very periodic. Again, I'm not saying it was just the insulin. I'm sure everything played a role, 100%. I just noticed that after that heavy use and the rapid weight gain, and the lethargicness and the symptoms really started escalating, you know, after that period of being on insulin for a year straight at heavy doses. So that definitely sped everything up. But touching on what you were saying before in regards to, you know, overall heart health, I feel like there are many variables that contribute to one getting heart disease. Yes, genetics play a role, but it's also your lifestyle outside of the gym and outside of steroid use. Some guys like to party, some aren't eating healthy, some don't sleep a lot. So I feel like the more that's working in your favor in regards to, you know, good sleep, good nutrition, being on top of your vitamins, and having like a low stress lifestyle, that will help and work in your favor. Now, if you're, you know, on certain steroids year round and you're doing, you know, extracurricular recreational drugs, and you're not sleeping much and you're not eating healthy, I mean, you're burning the wick on both ends. So I think there's you know, many variables that contribute to that for sure.
How heavy were you in the off season typically versus how heavy you were on stage during the 2018, 2019 sort of?
2018, I got up to 292, low 290, and I'm 5'10", so it's fairly heavy. I was on stage, Toronto Pro, I was like 246. And then I went to like 238 for Muscle Mayhem in Kansas. And then I told Milos, I said, you know what, fuck this insulin. I gotta just come in condition, because I was in like no man's land, according to Rudy at that point. And I think he nailed it, because I was not big enough to be comparing size-wise to Akeem and all these guys, but I wasn't shredded like I usually am. So it was like, I'm just not at my best at all. So we pulled it out, and then I really sucked down, and I feel like I was more flat for Vancouver, and I came out like 230. I was really light.
Now, what's one of the things with using things like insulin is constantly having to keep your carbohydrate levels in your blood at a certain level, so that you obviously don't go into a hypoglycemia situation. And it's difficult when you have that much size that you have such a high metabolic need already, because your metabolism is going high, you've got a lot of muscle mass, but you're cut at the same time. And it's hard to be in a deficit to cut while still keeping your blood glucose levels really high. and you were talking to me previously when we talked just about the distension of the stomach, because, and we've heard this before from people like Paul Dillett, etc., where if you're using peptides, growth hormone releasing peptides, or GH, or insulin, you have to have a high calorie intake. And if you're using thyroid, you have to take a high calorie intake as well. And obviously anabolics increase your metabolism. But how much of a role does do the calorie intake play, and balancing that in coming in full, but also not coming in obviously fat, because
Right.
you obviously want to be massive.
So yeah, so it's definitely a fine balance, because insulin the thing is, it does play a role, and a key role, and it does have a place. I mean, at the end of the day, it's the most anabolic substance in the world. But with that comes responsible dose. And like my video was basically about the difference between use and abuse. 5 IUs is functional. You could shuttle an ample amount of carbohydrates and amino acids into the muscle storage, and you could come full without all the excess side effects with your stomach spilling and all that. But when you're doing 60 IUs, 65 IUs, even 50 IUs, not only are you just storing, extra water, especially when it comes time for a show, but you're getting the bloat. And the thing is, outside of the actual side effects of the insulin itself, you're going to just become bloated because you're trying not to die. Like ideally, most guys are taking 10 grams of carbs per IU. So right off the bat, let's say 65 IUs. If I'm sitting on my couch and not burning any calories, that's 650 grams of carbs to survive. Now, factor that into your training, right? And of course, your metabolism's fast. Like the glycogen isn't just sitting in your muscle, because like you said, your metabolism is amplified during the use of, your anabolic steroid cycle. So to factor that in, you end up eating north of about 1,000 grams of carbs a day.
Wow.
And to get that in, you're going to end up getting bloated 100%, because again, you're also chasing you not going hypo during that period. It's past just the muscle gaining and shuttling of the glycogen. Now you're into survival mode. So never mind physical. It's like, if you don't want to die, you got to eat this much carbs, regardless if your stomach is pouring out or not.
Back in the day, a pro bodybuilder named Eric Fromm, he was in the U.S., won I think it was NBC Nationals. He was training under Chris Cormier, and he himself told me that he gained approximately 20 pounds of lean mass when he added insulin to the picture.
But over like a period of time?
Yeah, I think it was what he had said, about 15 months. Now
and it's funny. I was talking to Nick Shigili about that on the podcast we just did as well. Responsible use goes a long way, and there is a proper way to do it, and that is what I would recommend right there. Like lower amount over a prolonged period of time. Let your body actually gain the muscle without putting stress on the organs, especially your heart. It's just not necessary.
Now, when you sat with the doctor at that time, what was that like when you first sat down? I mean, you're like a lot of the people that are watching this right now, and we're going to see the comments. They're going to say, oh, this was genetic, it's all in moderation and everything else. And the steroids, how do you know definitively that it wasn't this or wasn't that? What was the doctor, and for those at home, a cardiologist, a medical doctor who then specializes after medicine and specializing just specifically in the heart, what was they saying to you? Because you must have been saying, no, it wasn't the steroids that had my no liver.
Absolutely. Well, first,
them into how you knew it wasn't something because you didn't want to believe.
So first of all, it is definitely genetics, because Scott, we could be doing the exact same cycle with the exact same food, and we will respond differently.
Sure,
not just on a muscular level, but organs as well. You could be perfectly fine, or the next person could have been dead. So again, this is something that people have to be aware about when they're entering, especially high doses. That it really kind of is a dice roll. The lower dose, the more responsible you are, the more control that you have, essentially, because every drug has a side effect at a certain dose, and that dose is different for everybody. So when I went in to see the cardiologist, he had me do the stress test, and he was impressed how long it took for my heart rate to go up. And then I'm thinking of like, I'm kind of wasting my time here, even though I kind of felt like shit. I'm just used to being heavy, and I didn't think it was my heart. But anyway, so yeah, I went in, I did that. He said I looked great on the treadmill. We did the ECG, which I've been doing multiple times a year for the last 10 years since I started with Dr. Baker, and I was fine. So then the last thing we did was the echocardiogram, and that's when he's like, Mike Cipriani, please step into my office. And he got all serious. And I was obviously concerned at that point. He said, you know, your heart is very, very weak. And I was so confused because you just said I had a great heart. He said the gym and you I got cut off. Yeah. So the cardiologist at that point said the gym and you being in physically great shape has actually kept you alive into this point. And it was actually masking, because when you're in the gym and your heart rate's elevated, it's pushing more blood around and it's actually helping your situation. You know, because the heart's obviously getting a workout. But with that said, it was masking it. So that's why you didn't, he said, if you were sitting around more, this would be blatantly obvious that, you know, that you do have this heart disease, and that this is like, he pulled up all the research and the stats. He's like, what you were doing is like exactly copy and paste of what exactly all the studies are showing for, you know, the abuse of anabolic steroids. Now, from a cardiologist, he's not going to say it was more tren or it was more insulin or more, they just categorize it as anabolics. It's all washed, it painted with the same brush. So yeah, that was pretty much the story with that incident.
So at that time, when you went home, were you soul searching, saying, look, I'm a pro bodybuilder? I mean, you have a background in helping youths with attention deficit disorder and autism and learning difficulties. At this point, are you sitting there saying, well, geez, in this career, this is my love, this is my hobby, this is obviously my career. What do I do? You know, who does Mike Cipriani be now?
To be honest with you, I'm so used to facing adversity in my life. It's something that I just faced from day one. So it actually never crossed my mind for a second to quit. I just said, how are we going to get around this? What do we got to do? And how am I going to get back to doing what I love at, you know, at the highest level that I could possibly be as a professional athlete? And I knew it was going to take time. Now, the cardiologist said I'd be back to normal in 9 to 12 months. Right now, I'm sitting at the 16-month range, and the heart has doubled in function. It's gotten a lot better. Now I'm at 45% for the, I forget the name, erection, you mentioned injection fraction. There you go. So that's at 45%. Originally, I walked in, it was just under 20. But he said normal is 55 to 70. So that's what we're pushing for. So I'm almost there. But the last 6 months, it hasn't moved. So that's why when I recorded the video I was hooked up to all the heart monitors, and we're trying to see, you know, also why my heart rate gets so low at certain times and how we can navigate around those issues to get on the right amount of medication and do whatever it is that I need to do to get back to 100%.
So you obviously, with this protocol now, are you looking at, okay, you do this much cardio, and what kind of diet recommendations did the cardiologist have for you? Because we all know the rice and chicken, rice and chicken, rice and chicken, but that may not necessarily be exactly what they're recommending. What did they recommend specifically?
It's funny because my cardiologist, I mean, great guy, but he's not in shape, doesn't have knowledge on nutrition. So they only recommended like the medication, like the heart medication. Didn't say anything about diet, didn't say anything about anything. This is something I did more on research and plus a little bit of common sense. I decided to obviously take it down a notch in regard to my calorie intake. But, you know, at the same time, I'd probably be better off if I went down to 200 pounds. Maybe my heart would be perfect. But again, my mental health, I need to make sure that I'm lighter, but still moving in a healthy direction. So even if it takes my heart a little bit longer to recover, I know in my head that I'm also going to be healthy and okay, because to look in the mirror and to watch yourself wither is very hard. So I'm like, you know what? There's a fine balance here. I could still train and be happy. I'm lighter. I'm a little bit weaker, but I'm still eating an adequate amount of calories to hover around 245. But, you know, it is interesting you asked that because the cardiologist didn't steer me in any direction with the diet.
And you're not here to blame anybody. I mean, I saw some comments that came out, and what I really liked was you had complete ownership of the situation and really said, I am the one who ultimately decided to do this. Nobody
Absolutely.
Down, and nobody just said, and I think really, I mean, this isn't you speaking, this is me speaking. I personally don't think that in professional sport today, I don't think you can really compete without performance-enhancing drugs. I mean, you can compete, but I don't think you can be competitive.
There you go. You got it. You can be competitive.
And I think you, like a lot of people, did what you thought was good in that you are very knowledgeable in nutrition, diet, and PEDs. Obviously, you're a pro bodybuilder, but you sought out a coach. And I think that your message in everything, what I got out of it was, don't just assume that your coach knows everything about all of the protocols that they're emailing you or text messaging you on. You have a responsibility for yourself to read up on each of these things, see how these things get together. Also, what is your opinion on getting blood work done and things? Are you seeing that as everyone talks about it, but no one does it? Or are you seeing it as it's more common? Or what are you seeing?
I mean, with my clients, I make sure they're always doing it, especially if they're entertaining the fact of going on anabolics. Again, it is a personal decision. I never push people, whether you're a client or a friend or someone just asking. It needs to be research you do on your own, and you come to this conclusion on your own. So with that said, for myself, I always push guys to do it. I hear some guys saying they do, some say they don't, or some say they need to go more, but I still feel like it's not taken as seriously as it needs to, because people are like, well, I feel great. I mean, that doesn't mean anything. You know, your liver could be on its way out almost. Once the eyes turn yellow, it's like damage control. You could have avoided it. So you need to really take the initiative to do your research. And again, that kind of going into my next point of, you know, with your coaches, you need to be asking questions. You need to not be scared. You need to have a relationship with your coach where it's more of a friendship and not a dictatorship. Because a dictatorship is not a coach. And you don't know my body. So with the team effort and me telling you how I respond to certain compounds, certain exercises, certain foods, that's going to help you to give me a better answer, you know, like help me help you kind of thing. So I definitely feel like people should be going for more, like usually 2 to 3 times a year at least, depending how much you're cycling, but it is something that isn't practiced enough. Absolutely.
It's also a problem where a lot of the steroids are not like they were in the 80s where they came from a pharmacy or they got smuggled in Europe or wherever.
Absolutely.
We're talking about underground sources, and they have obviously roid testing kits and things like that, but a lot of people are having a hard time, obviously with COVID as well. So a lot of people have lost their jobs, and gyms, for the most part, I mean, you're based in Ontario where most of the gyms are closed.
Yes.
It's really difficult. So getting real stuff and knowing you're not getting, if you think you're getting Anavar and you're getting Dianabol and you're female, now your voice is, you know, deeper. I think there's also a responsibility on the athlete that
yes,
they obviously have to maybe get some of these things tested or verify their sources, because something that's written down from a trainer is assuming that you're getting that exact thing.
You got it. And I feel like that's also a common problem because sometimes it's like, you know, the diet is where it needs to be, the cardio is where it needs to be, but the Anavar a female is taking is actually D-ball or T-ball or whatever. So you're like, I don't understand why this girl's holding weight and gaining weight, holding water and gaining weight. So definitely, and that is a common, even if not even just on a physical aspect, it's an internal aspect. Because certain compounds, you know, whether you're a male or female, you can't be going over certain doses. And, you know, if you think you're taking 25 milligrams of, you know, Anavar and it's 25 milligrams of D-ball for a female, I mean, you know, you could definitely start running into problems. So it's definitely a big difference between back in the 90s and it is now, because a lot of the things back then were, like you said, either from the pharmacy or brought over from Europe. And now it's just, I feel like it's such a demand. In anywhere there's a supply and demand, there's going to be more room for corruption. You know, people are greedy for money. They don't really care if what the product they're giving out is quality or not. And unfortunately, it affects people. And, you know, steroids are dangerous enough, unfortunately. So it's just sad because it's a very common thing and I see it all the time.
How at the levels, I mean, you were back 2015 Nationals, you turned pro. Did your phone ring the next day with all kinds of sponsorships? Because we're led to believe that when I turn pro, then I'll start getting my social media going and then I'll start getting myself out there. You've been there. Take us through 2015, you turned pro. What was it like for you? How did life change when you became a pro athlete?
I mean, social media, you know, was kind of going crazy in regards to the messages, the DMs, your following goes up. And you obviously, you know, I guess your name is buzzing around more and people talk about you. But in regards to like massive sponsorship opportunity, not much. But I don't know if that's just maybe in the area. Like, you know, I was training at Fitness 365 in Toronto. It's not exactly like a huge hub for for the fitness industry. But as an amateur, when I went to, Gold's Venice, I had a shoot with Flex Magazine, and you're around a lot bigger names, and you're just kind of in that atmosphere. So it's like, it's funny because that's how important it is. It really brings it to your attention that where you are plays a huge role, whether you're a pro or not. If you look good and you're at the right place at the right time, you're going to get opportunities. But no, when I came back, people saying congrats and whatever, and they want to meet up. But in regards to like sponsorship opportunities, nothing much. It came to me kind of a little bit later once I started doing pro shows, and you start to, establish yourself a little bit. People will start seeing you more as a pro than just someone who got their card, because there are a lot of pros out there who get their card and they don't compete, right? Sorry. So, yeah.
I think it's funny because another fellow Canadian, Mark Anthony Wingson, who won the Olympia, he lists himself as hailing from Las Vegas, doesn't list that he's from Oakville, Ontario.
It's odd.
Ben Pekulski, same thing. He's living in, I believe it's Tampa now. Both of those people said to me that the opportunities for them opened up when they went to the U.S., that there was more opportunities for photo shoots, for sponsorships, 24-hour gyms, et cetera, Have you found that being a Canadian has almost held you back a little bit from opportunities?
Yes. I mean, social media is a great tool to get your stuff out there. I mean, Chris Bumstead is a great example of that. Obviously, he's like the king of Canada at the moment. But with that said, being there and being in that environment, some things just social media just doesn't pick up. Like if I don't know somebody, they're not going to look at my profile because they don't know who I am. But if you're in front of me and you see me training legs and you're like, whoa, who the hell is this guy? It's something you could talk and get to know me on a personal level, and then take more interest and look at my social media and kind of go from there. And that's what I found for me is exactly what happened when I was in Gold's Venice. The number of times I went there, every time I went, it was just, I had great opportunities, and I knew if I was there that I'd have opportunities that I didn't have here. And especially it's just the atmosphere, the weather, everything is just more uplifting. You're more living that lifestyle. Here, when you're, shoveling snow and you're, it takes you an hour to warm up in the gym because your joints are freezing. It's not as fitness, I guess. It's not as welcoming.
Okay.
For the,
health-wise, take me back. If you were giving advice right now to yourself on the Sunday in Edmonton, here you are, you won the CBF Nationals, you're now officially an IFBB Pro. Health-wise, what would you do differently? Obviously, I know you do coaching for athletes that are considering doing competitions or even just getting jacked and looking great. So you have a lot of experience now in the safe way to do things and preventive and everything else. What are some of the things you would say to yourself, this is what we're going to do now in the pro league in terms of now as a professional athlete differently than what you may have done?
I feel like none of my health problems really started up until maybe 2017, 18 especially. I mean, I didn't get an echocardiogram in 2015, but according to my doctor, Dr. Baker, he said this issue was definitely more recent because you would have felt these side effects earlier. Because I always thought potentially if it was something earlier that I might not have noticed, if it was something I had when I was young, and he said there's no chance. So I think 2015, if I were to talk to myself, I'd say keep getting your blood tests, keep coming off for 3 months of the year or every 3 months between your cycles, and keep doing that. But if I could have fast forwarded and knew what I would have done in 2018, I would have said ask more questions and be more stubborn and listen, follow your gut. Because in the back of my head, I kind of knew, doing that much was not going to end probably the best. But I thought, you know what? If this trainer has worked with high-end athletes, he knows what he's doing. There's a missing puzzle piece to my puzzle because I'm not winning shows. So maybe this is it. He's got my best interest. He's done it before, so he's going to apply the science on me. There's no point in me paying him and me doing my own thing. So, ask more questions, I think definitely would have been the biggest thing I would have told myself.
And I got to think that insulin, I got to think that there's an exponential benefit if you go from 5 IUs 10 IUs, or like I don't know that it means you've got to go, let's go 11 times my dose or 12 times, 13 times my dose in order to start making gains. Because I've heard a lot that 5 IUs of Humulin R can cause X result. You got to think that sticking around that dose, you could kind of continue to make some gains without having to go that extreme. But are you feeling like the extremes is kind of part of the culture we live in now for kind of everything?
I think the extremes are overrated. I think that people just think extremes because they don't realize that the athletes are putting in so much for so long and they're eating great year round. Like as a professional, there's no point of just slamming a high amount of gear and then being sloppy when you're off gear and not eating properly. This is a year round thing. So if you're responsible and you're putting in the work in the gym and you're training hard, the high dosages aren't necessary, because if you don't rely on the gear, once you plug it in, you're not only going to see great results because you've maintained good weight, because assuming you're eating proper, when you put in that insulin, you can only shuttle so much, carbs and carbs and amino acids and get stored as glycogen. So more is not better. Not only for, let's say, like, in a perfect world, this doesn't affect your health at all. Even from a muscular standpoint and an aesthetic standpoint, it's useless after a certain point. You can only shuttle so much. After that point, you're just chasing, not going hypo. So it's like, it becomes counterproductive at that point. So again, use and abuse is a fine line. And it's sad because I feel like a lot of guys maybe would still be alive or not have health issues if they were to step outside the box and say, you know what, I saw great results doing 5 IUs. Why am I doing so much more? Or with tests, I saw so much better results at 750 to 1,000 milligrams. Why am I doing 2,500 milligrams? You know what I mean? So honestly, I think people underestimate the power of food, because when the food is there and you're eating enough and you're eating healthy and you're putting in work in the gym, whether you're on or off, you could get great results. So that when you come back on, you didn't drop so much to get all your gains back. You come down a little bit and then your receptors are fresh, your body's healthy, you're responding adequately, and you just skyrocket after.
I feel like a lot of the people now, they don't really understand that you've got to be able to get your diet discipline of eating. When you talk to Phil Heath when he started training with Henny Rambot, or you talk to Jay Cutler when he switched from Chris Aceto to Rambot, if you're eating 8 meals a day and you're having your alarm clock go off 8 times a day, and you have the ability to have that food prepared, and that's part of the responsibility as an athlete, or be it 6 meals, be it 8 meals, whatever. And then your training has to be done a certain way. And we've all seen the variances of training with this athlete versus this athlete.
Absolutely.
And a lot of times I don't feel like, and I've seen top pros and I've watched them train, and I'm like, man, that guy doesn't know. Like, there's one pro who's quite popular and has almost no soleus, didn't know seated calf raises build much more on the soleus than the gastro, thought that standing calf raises and seated were the exact same thing and worked the exact same part of the muscle.
Right.
And not doing slow on a negative, spotting somebody on a positive or spotting a negative, which is ridiculous. Like, so many things that you just take for granted. But I feel like now a lot of the amateurs, they start off with juice.
Crazy high doses.
They don't know the importance of diet. They think, oh, diet, yeah, I'm doing that. Now give me the SARMs, give me the this, give me the that. But you can't tell them. You tell them that you got to have your diet down, and they think, oh, yeah.
The problem is they want everything fast, and they think things have come fast. I've been bodybuilding since 2008, and I know it's a slow journey. So there's no point of rushing things, especially if it's going to cost you your health. Great things come with time. You're not going to build a great physique fast. You're not going to lose a great physique fast. It takes time. I mean, it's easier to lose it fast than it is to gain, of course, but if you're on top of the basics, and again, the food and the training, whether you're on or off, you will continue to move in the right direction. And like Jay Cutler said, it's a marathon, and you don't have to be making massive gains, but as long as you're making slow progressive gains and you're always moving forward, in the end, it will all add up. So to start off, I mean, I think a lot of the guys, they obviously want the results fast, and they think guys are taking higher doses than they actually are. And, they want it quick, and they think, you know what, especially if their eating isn't down pat, the results aren't coming at a speed that they want. It's not fast enough. I want it now. Look at Big Ramy. He's huge now. I want to be now. I like this girl now. I want more likes now. I want more views now. Like everything, especially with social media, it's like now. So it's very easy for guys to just fall in that trap of take more and get bigger without really thinking about the repercussions of it.
What does your supplement stack now look like for health? Like, do you take detoxification herbs, or do you take, like, are you on a special stack that sort of helps you get healthier?
Yeah, I mean, right now, a lot of the supplements I'm on is revolving around my heart.
Yep.
So I'm on Ublinicol. I don't even know how to pronounce it.
Yep.
Yeah. Resveratrol. I'm taking bergamot extract. I'm taking vitamin K2. Then I have my fish oils. I also just got recommended take argan. I heard argan's or argan is very good for your heart.
Okay.
So yeah, but I've been taking that stack for a while now at a higher dose, and it's helped me except the last 6 months. So now I'm trying to navigate and find out a way to continue to see the results, because we're in a little bit of a sticking point. I know we'll get past it though, but it's a little bit frustrating.
Yeah, it must be obviously going through all of these things and in a COVID world where
Yes.
you can't go to a restaurant and enjoy yourself, or you know, there's certain restrictions that are here. But are you finding that that also plays a factor in you keeping your spirits up? Because it's hard enough to recover
Yes.
from what you've been through.
Yes.
Level that you're used to being jacked up 285, 290. It's difficult for you to be able to accept that, hey, I can't be that heavy again because I might die, you know, and
That's right.
hard.
And that's why I feel like maintaining the weight that I'm at, you know, 245, it's for me, it's healthy for my mind. And I know it might take a little bit more for my heart to get better, but I'm okay with that, because if I were to go down to 200 pounds, my heart might get better quicker, but I would lose it. I would lose my mind. And I'm aware of that. So I kind of dance around the fact that I still need to be able to train at it with like moving decent weight and feeling good about myself, you know, because to go from, like you said, like 285, 290 to 200 or 210, it's very, very hard, especially because now there's nothing to do. So, you know, I'm trapped in my house. I don't really leave. Luckily, I have somewhere to train, but that's it. I mean, I don't see friends much anymore. So whatever problems you have manifesting in your head, they just kind of grow and grow and grow. And I know that's a common problem with a lot of people right now, even outside of the bodybuilding, just problems in general. It's just with the whole COVID pandemic, it's been hard to be in a state of healthy mental health, because your daily routine is things have just changed a lot. So, and it's unfortunate. Hopefully things go back to normal soon though.
It's a real unfortunate part for you because, I mean, we've seen you go through the ranks. You know, obviously in Canada, we're aware of all of the different pros as they're coming up. And there's limited opportunities for sponsorships in Canada. But it's really one of those things where I find that there's the genetically blessed, the Chris Bumsteads that come out right away. Boom, holy crap. Ian Bellier, holy crap. Ben Pekulski. There's certain guys that have come out of Canada. Paul Dillett, another great example. Mm-hmm. And then obviously there's Missy Truscott, IFBB Pro for fitness. And you see this with great genetics, with great diet, training, hard work. You see them accelerate. Then you see the other ones who maybe they struggle at the nationals, and sometimes that can be tough. Friggin' Grimes struggled at the nationals. There's been a lot of guys.
Yeah.
Jerome Bravo struggled at the nationals. Ron Partlow, I think he's been at the nationals.
Yeah, he's a soldier.
But I find that those people almost have more pressure, because once they get into the pro league, and now they're having to be competitive with a larger pool in the U.S., being a lot more people into the sport.
That's right.
And a lot more shows to be able to do. And maybe more posing clinics, more trainers that have access, you know, gyms that are open 24 hours, tanning that's 24 hours. It's almost unfair. So I feel like all athletes in Canada have this increased pressure to try to be competitive. And if you don't have beautiful genetics, this is a sport that a lot of it is based on genetics. And sometimes if you don't have the genetics, you have to try even harder at everything you do. And the drugs could be pushing people like yourself to have to use these doses in order to overcome maybe not having the best genetics possible. I mean, I talked to some of these guys, and when you see Phil Heath, first show he ever did, who knew nothing about what he was doing at that time, and you
still beautiful shape though, still a beautiful physique.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying is it's not like he knew more than you did about how to train.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
It's just the genetics play a huge role. Obviously, their athletic background too. And I feel sometimes it forces athletes to use even more stuff, hoping to be competitive, when maybe if you have better genetics, you don't have to use the same levels of doses, and you get by with better genetics than maybe somebody who doesn't have those amazing genetics.
You know, it's interesting. It's something I've learned over the years, you know, that more is not necessarily better. I know it's hard telling guys that who are coming up in the ranks, but when you're just polluting your body so much, not only does it saturate your receptors, but it creates more of a toxic environment. And that can affect your appetite, the way you digest your food, the nutrient delivery to the muscles. So there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes that people don't really think about. They just think about, you know, if I'm taking more, potentially like more is more muscle, when it's actually really not the case. And this is something I fell victim to. I'm not saying it didn't happen to me. I mean, when you're trying to push the limits and you're looking for every way to get ahead of the Bumsteads and the Grimes and, you know, a lot of these top end guys, you think outside the box.
Sure.
You know, you got to think outside the box because they have a leg up on you. So what are you going to do to get your leg up on them?
Would we ever see you go down into cutting down into a 212 class?
There's no chance in hell.
Okay.
Because I would be like a string bean. And again, being 5'10",
You're 10,
my
you're
physique, yeah, like my physique, I look very awkward, like a distorted spaghetti string.
just too tall. Yeah, that's the
Yeah,
one.
and yeah, even my symmetry. I'm great when I'm full, and for me to be full, I got to be like, you know, high 240s on stage.
Okay. And with men's classic physique for your height, what is the cutoff on that?
I haven't even looked because I also feel like it's not really my thing.
Yeah.
I totally respect it. I just feel like my physique just doesn't really fall into that category.
And see, folks at home, everybody has to realize that there are different goals that different people have.
Yes.
And nothing. I bet you anything right now, if I said to you, okay, Mike, if you were to take a pill and you could become the men's physique Olympia winner, but you got to wear the board shorts and you got to do that, would you be willing to do it, even if you could win the Olympia? And what would you say?
No, because it doesn't make me happy. Happiness for me is everything. I chase my happiness, and it doesn't necessarily have a dollar value attached to it. Like, I could be, let's say, win Mr. Olympia and not have a lot of money. I don't give a shit. I'll find a way to make money, and I'll use, you know, my knowledge, not necessarily from being Mr. Olympia, but just from knowing about how to grow the body. I'll use that to make money because, you know, internal happiness goes way further than anything. So what's the point of having all the money if you're not internally happy, right? For me, I think that's always been the main focus. And that's why I wouldn't, if you said, here's like, you know, $500,000, $1 million, and you're miserable or not happy with no legs. I mean, my legs are what, you know, I'm known for. So I got to just do what makes me happy. And I think for everyone out there watching, guys, make sure you do what you love, follow your heart, and don't let anyone, you know, speak you out of doing what you love, within reason, of course.
The Canadian IFBB Pro that we lost, I think it was last year, with Scott Mill.
Unfortunately, yes.
One time, and he said, you know, I don't know if you knew this, but he got an offer to go into the WWE.
Oh, did he? I didn't know that.
And he turned them down. And they were going to make him a big star, blonde hair, blue eyes. And if you remember, he was on Battledome back in the American Gladiators. He was on American Gladiators.
I remember Gladiators.
And so he was Moose, I think, in American Gladiator, and that or Battledome. And I said to him, man, I go, that must have been a chance of a lifetime. You could have went from arena to arena. You could have had an action figure behind you, this and that. How did you turn that down? And he said, it wasn't my passion. He goes, if I couldn't do my passion, which is I want to be the best bodybuilder in the world, I don't care about being a wrestler and all that stuff. I have no passion for that. And I think that I've had other, Greg Kovacs, another Canadian IFBB Pro, I said to him, if you had specialized in strongman, or if you'd specialized in powerlifting, you could have been the greatest strongman. You could have been the Brian Shaw of that era, just genetically, just in absolute.
Oh, of course, just incredibly strong.
And he said, yeah, but that I never cared about how much I lifted. I always wanted to be the best bodybuilder, and that's why I feel it's important that you realize that you do realize that if you don't have passion for what your ideal body type is, no one can talk you in the world to changing your goals of what makes you happy on the physique side.
Yeah, I mean, your heart is your heart, and at the end of the day, there's always going to be obstacles. So whatever it is, you know, we always love the challenge. And I'm just saying, everyone in the fitness industry, we all come, usually the majority of the people come from maybe unhealthy relationships, unhealthy upbringing, addiction, abuse, whatever it is. But the challenge of making that initial jump and the transformation to be a competitor has been a challenge. And a lot of us are underrated. That's a challenge, to be known and respected. and then it's a challenge to actually be good at what you do. So there's always challenges, there's always doubts. I feel like if it's in your heart, as long as you're giving 110%, even if you're not great at what you do, being happy goes so much further than, you know, necessarily a big check. So that's why, you know, like these guys, Greg Kovac could have been the next Brian Shaw, but it wasn't in his heart. He's like, you know what, I'd rather have less money and do what I love. And waking up knowing that you're blessed and being able to do what you love is something that money just cannot buy.
Yeah. Well, I applaud you for having the courage to obviously go down this road, even though it wasn't great news the doctors gave you, and being a spokesperson to saying, hey, you're not judging people, do what you want to do, but do things responsibly.
Yeah.
I think that's where, I mean, for those at home who are considering getting a coach, I think they should look to you because you've actually been through it to know, hey, if I had just done this, or if I had just done that, or I hadn't done this, but I did this, I almost feel like you'd be a great coach for people who want to avoid potential health effects, because you can't compete if you're injured. You can't compete if your health goes.
Yeah,
we take it for granted.
We all do.
Yep. Never get problems.
Yeah.
Until you don't have your health, then you can't train. And you're like, man, wait a second. What's the point?
And that's why, because it's like you don't get sick every day. It takes usually time for the body to, you know, acclimate this this disease or illness or cancer. It's not something that you just overnight. And especially when you're on gear and you're training, you feel good, you get the attention, and you're like, coming off just doesn't appeal to you. You feel great. I don't need it really. You know, it's easy to push the limits in regards to the doses and the time frame that you're on without thinking about the repercussions, because the repercussions are like back here. It's like noise in the background, right? Because right now in front of you, you're seeing all the great things, but it's easy for that to slide, which is why I always remind people, get your blood work done, stay on top of your stuff, get off, you know, make sure you're coming off depending where you are in the season, if you're prep or you're off season, every 4 months or whatever, you know, your coach recommends. But make sure, again, you're asking questions and get the blood work. Some people could sit on longer than others because their blood work is allowing it. Some can't because your blood work isn't allowing it. If your kidney levels are high, your heart's not well, your liver's through the roof, your liver enzymes are through the roof, you got to come off. Doesn't matter if you've only been on for 2 months. Be in a good, healthy state so your body will respond to everything better. And not only will you be getting better results, you'll be able to stay on longer. So everything's just a circle that really feeds off of each other. And I feel like it's really important people know that. And being with a coach that actually is aware of that and has your back. And again, I'm not just promoting myself. Anybody who cares about their client, you know, and actually takes the time to explain to them, or if they want to talk on the phone, you know, it's like there's a genuine respect for one another and is willing to learn your body. Because like I said before, me dictating to someone, like if I took you on as a client, me telling you what to do without listening to your feedback, I can't help you efficiently because I don't truly know the ins and outs of your body. So it's definitely a teamwork, and people need to keep that in mind.
Now, what is the prognosis that the doctor has of your heart right now?
He said it could be permanently damaged because I haven't been responding to the medication the last 6 months. It could be permanently damaged, but of course we're trying to, you know, we added more Entresto. That's one of the drugs that I'm on, and that's a very well-known drug to help the case that I have. That's at a higher dose, and we made some mild adjustments, and I go back in again in 3 months. So I've took it in my own hands to do more research, to take more supplements, and I've incorporated a lot more Stairmaster after training to like actually challenge my heart and get it pumping more efficiently. I mean, it's better than the bike. Because usually I'm used to the bike, it gets me lean, but this is past being lean. This is on a health base that I got to do whatever is best for my heart. And I really don't want to drop any more weight. If I have to, I will, but it's just a matter of time. So hopefully the next checkup will be good.
Do you have kids?
I do not.
Okay. Well, that's a little bit better situation. Because
For sure.
But you still obviously have a wide family that
yes.
You make it. So when we saw it, I was like, man, that guy's always been nice. I saw him at the BioX booth at the Olympia. I've seen you backstage at Vancouver Pro, Trump, all these things, and you're always a soft-spoken guy. I've never heard you a part of any gossip or crap.
I try to stay away from it, unless people. Like, if people come at me, it's different. But I usually am not the one to start it. It's if people come to my DMs and insulting me and belittling me, the Italian comes out a little bit. I may get a little bit hot-headed, but I usually just really try to say, like tranquil about everything, because at the end of the day, if people are going to gossip, I can't be calling everybody and trying to, you know, correct their broken telephone rumors. It's not in my best interest to do that. So, I mean, of course I want people to think of me highly. I like to help people. You know, I'm a social worker by nature, and I love to contribute in a positive way to the industry. And that's just really my goal at the end of the day. That's why I made the video. I know people are going to do what they want. All I wanted to do was, hey, you know what? Heads up, guys. Don't do what I did so you don't end up in my shoes. Do research, ask questions, and take care of yourself. That's it.
Yeah. I thought it was great. You even plugged the website, steroid.com.
Yeah.
Obviously to get your information, but just learn. I mean, it's every bodybuilder has no problem learning about protein, how it works, whey versus beef versus tuna versus egg whites, and then training, you know, should I do 6 to 8 reps? Should I do 8? But when it comes to gear, it's almost like this lack of responsibility to do the work to learn. And the same thing with marketing themselves. You know, they don't know how to use social media, and they refuse to learn. But this is part of it is, you and I are sitting here, it's a Saturday afternoon, there's other things we could be doing, but we're deciding to get the information out there and help market ourselves, build our brands, and it takes work. It's not easy.
Absolutely. Doing the due diligence for us, you know, as I guess entrepreneurs for our own business, but also taking the initiative to educate other people that are wanting to enter the sport, or people that are already in the sport but don't have the knowledge. So there's always things that we can learn from each other. That's why I always tell people to keep an ear open, because I mean, you can never really know enough. Even if you don't necessarily agree with it, you're still learning on what not to do, right? So
yeah. Listen, how can fans go and see you? What's your Instagram handle?
So Mike_Wheels_IFBB Pro.
Great. Do you have a website or anything?
I don't have I have a website. It's not going yet, so I wouldn't send them there. But I just started my YouTube channel not too long ago. It's Mike Wheels TV. We got 3 episodes underway. I mean, once COVID gets out of the way and I get the videographer of the gym again, that'll be up and going. But for now, you can check me out on YouTube or on Instagram.
And BioX is your sponsor.
BioX is my sponsor. You can check them out at BioX Nutrition and use the code WHEELS15.
Thanks very much, Mike. We really appreciate the time that you've taken today. You've been obviously very candid about the information, and I can't thank you enough for joining us today.
Anytime. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Okay, take care.